is. It's sweet, and it conjures up sort of ancient stalking figures as well.
For most of her life, Caroline Kenedy has handled unimaginable loss with quiet strength. From losing her father as a young child to saying goodbye to some of the people she loved most, tragedy has followed her family for decades. But nothing could prepare her for the heartbreaking loss that would come later in life. Join us as we take a closer look at Caroline Kenedy's life after losing her daughter and uncover the heartbreaking journey she has faced through the years. The Great Family Tragedy. Before tragedy became a constant part of her life, Caroline Kenedy experienced a childhood unlike anyone else's. Born on November 27, 1957, she was the first child of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kenedy. Her early years were filled with love, attention, and the excitement that came with being part of one of America's most admired families. When her father became president in 1961, Caroline was just 3 years old. The White House became her home, but to her it was simply the place where she played, learned, and spent time with her parents. Although millions of Americans followed every move the Kennedy family made, Jackie Kennedy worked hard to give Caroline as normal a childhood as possible. She created a private nursery inside the White House where Caroline could play with toys, read books, and enjoy everyday childhood activities. Jackie believed that children should have routines and stability, even while living in the most famous house in the country. Caroline rode her pony around the White House grounds, attended nursery school, and enjoyed quiet moments with her family whenever her father's busy schedule allowed. Everything changed on November 22, 1963. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated while riding in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Caroline was only 5 years old, just days away from celebrating her 6th birthday. Her younger brother, John F. Kennedy Jr., was only 3. In a single afternoon, their father was gone, and their lives were changed forever. At such a young age, Caroline could not fully understand what had happened. She knew her father was no longer coming home, but the full meaning of his death would only become clearer as she grew older. At the same time, the entire nation was grieving alongside her family. Television broadcasts, newspaper headlines, and photographs brought the Kennedy family's sorrow into homes across America and around the world. Millions of people became emotionally connected to Caroline and her little brother. They were no longer simply the president's children. They became symbols of innocence, loss, and a family's heartbreak. The public watched every moment of the funeral, and 2 photographs became some of the most recognizable images in American history. One showed young Caroline holding her mother's hand while wearing a white coat during the funeral procession. Another captured 3-year-old John Jr. saluting his father's casket on his 3rd birthday. Those images have remained powerful reminders of that tragic week for more than 60 years. For Caroline, however, those famous photographs represented real memories rather than historical moments. Behind every picture was a little girl trying to understand why so many strangers were crying and why her family had suddenly changed forever. Jackie Kennedy quickly realized that protecting her children had become her most important responsibility. She wanted Caroline and John to remember their father with love rather than be overwhelmed by the constant attention surrounding his death. While she carefully preserved President Kennedy's memory through family stories, photographs, and traditions, she also tried to shield her children from the endless public interest in their lives. Soon after the assassination, Jackie moved the family from Washington, D.C., first to Georgetown and later to New York City. She believed New York would give Caroline and John a better chance to grow up outside the constant spotlight of politics. She enrolled them in private schools, hired tutors when needed, and fought hard to keep reporters away from their everyday lives. It was never easy because the Kennedy name attracted attention everywhere they went, but Jackie remained determined to give her children as much privacy as possible. As Caroline grew older, she came to understand that her family carried a history unlike any other. She lived with both enormous privilege and deep personal sadness. She had opportunities that few people could imagine, but she also carried the pain of losing her father before she truly had the chance to know him. His memory surrounded her every day, preserved by her mother and remembered by an entire country. Over the years, Caroline has often spoken about her mother being the greatest influence in her life. Watching Jackie rebuild their family after such an unimaginable loss taught her lessons about strength, dignity, and resilience that stayed with her forever. Those early years shaped the woman she would become, preparing her for challenges she could never have imagined were still waiting ahead. But heartbreaking loss was far from finished with Caroline Kennedy's family. Repeated family losses. As Caroline Kennedy grew into adulthood, the losses that shaped her childhood did not stop. Instead, they continued one after another, turning her life into a series of painful goodbyes. While she worked hard to build her own future, she also watched many of the people closest to her disappear far too soon. Through it all, she rarely spoke publicly about her grief, choosing instead to carry it quietly. One of the first major losses after her father's death came with the passing of her grandfather, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. He died in November 1969 after years of poor health following a stroke. Caroline was just 11 years old. Joseph Kennedy had been the family patriarch, helping build one of the most influential political families in American history. Although illness had limited his involvement during Caroline's childhood, his death marked the end of an important chapter for the Kennedy family. The years that followed were far from peaceful. The Kennedy family remained in the public eye, and every triumph seemed to be followed by another setback. In 1969, Senator Ted Kennedy became involved in the Chappaquiddick incident, where a car he was driving went off a bridge, leading to the death of Mary Jo Kopechne. While Caroline did not lose a loved one in that tragedy, the event deeply affected the Kennedy family's public image. For years afterward, the family faced renewed criticism and constant media attention. Caroline had already learned what it meant to live under public scrutiny, but now she saw how quickly family struggles could become national headlines. Another important figure left Caroline's life in 1975 when Aristotle Onassis died. Jackie Kennedy had married the Greek shipping businessman in 1968, several years after President Kennedy's assassination. The marriage had sparked enormous public debate, but for Jackie, it brought a measure of security and privacy that she desperately needed after years of living under constant attention. Caroline and her brother had mixed feelings about their mother's second marriage, as many children might. Even so, Onassis became an important part of their lives. More importantly, Caroline understood how much comfort and stability he had given Jackie. His death meant her mother once again faced life without a partner, and Caroline watched Jackie rely even more on her children as they entered adulthood together. By the 1980s, Caroline had built a life of her own. She married designer Edwin Schlossberg in 1986, and together they started a family. Their daughter Rose was born in 1988, followed by Tatiana in 1990, and their son Jack in 1993. Becoming a wife and mother brought Caroline great happiness. For a time, it seemed she was creating the stable family life her own mother had worked so hard to provide. Then came another heartbreaking loss. In early 1994, Jackie Kennedy Onassis was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The illness progressed quickly. Only a few months after her diagnosis, she passed away on May 19, 1994, at the age of 64. Caroline was 36 years old. Losing her mother was devastating. Jackie had been much more than a parent. Since the assassination of President Kennedy, she had been the family's protector, decision-maker, and emotional foundation. She had guided Caroline through childhood, shielded her from overwhelming public attention, and taught her how to remain calm, even during life's hardest moments. Caroline often described Jackie as the greatest influence on her life. Everything from her sense of duty to her respect for privacy came from watching her mother handle extraordinary hardship with quiet dignity. When Jackie died, Caroline lost the person she had leaned on for more than 3 decades. Still, one of the most devastating losses of Caroline Kennedy's life was waiting just a few years away: John F. Kennedy, Jr. Of all the losses Caroline Kennedy experienced as an adult, the death of her younger brother, John F. Kennedy, Jr., may have been the most personal. Their bond was unlike any other because they had shared a childhood that no one else could fully understand. They had both lost their father before they were old enough to truly know him. They had grown up under constant public attention, watched by millions of people who felt connected to the Kennedy family. Through every stage of life, Caroline and John carried those experiences together. As children, they depended heavily on one another. After President John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, their mother, Jackie Kennedy, became determined to protect them from the intense public spotlight. Even after moving to New York, Caroline and John remained among the most recognized children in America. While other siblings might argue over everyday things, Caroline and John shared something much deeper. They understood the sadness of losing a parent, the pressure of carrying the Kenedy name, and the challenge of growing up with the entire world watching. As they became adults, their lives followed different paths, but they remained close. John Jr. grew into one of the most famous people in the country. Ever since the image of him saluting his father's casket at the funeral had become part of American history, people had watched him grow up. His good looks, charm, and easy personality made him a favorite with both the public and the media. Although he earned a law degree, he became better known for his public image and later founded George magazine, which mixed politics with popular culture. He was often described as America's most eligible bachelor before eventually finding lasting love. In 1996, John married Carolyn Bessette, a fashion publicist known for her elegance and quiet personality. Their wedding was held in complete secrecy on Cumberland Island, Georgia, surprising even many reporters who closely followed the Kenedy family. The couple became one of the most photographed pairs in America, yet they worked hard to keep their marriage as private as possible. Despite constant attention from photographers, John and Carolyn tried to build a normal life together. Everything changed during the summer of 1999. On the evening of July 16th, John piloted his small private plane from New Jersey toward Martha's Vineyard. Carolyn was flying with him, along with her older sister, Lauren Bessette. The three were traveling to attend a family wedding. Weather conditions were hazy, making the flight more difficult than expected. Investigators later concluded that John likely became disoriented while flying over the Atlantic Ocean, causing the aircraft to lose control and crash into the water. When the plane failed to arrive, concern quickly spread. The United States Coast Guard launched a massive search operation involving aircraft, boats, and rescue teams. News networks provided constant updates, and millions of Americans followed every development, hoping for good news. For several days, there remained a small sense of hope that survivors might be found. Sadly, that hope disappeared when the wreckage of the aircraft was located on the ocean floor. Divers recovered the bodies of John, Carolyn, and Lauren several days after the crash. All three had died on impact. The nation mourned once again. For many Americans, John Jr.'s death felt like the closing of another chapter in the Kennedy story. He had represented youth, hope, and the possibility of carrying his father's legacy into a new generation. His death at just 38 years old shocked people around the world. For Caroline, however, this was not simply the loss of a famous brother. It was the loss of the one person who truly shared her earliest memories. No one else knew exactly what it felt like to lose President Kennedy as a child. No one else understood what it was like to be photographed during moments of unimaginable grief, or to spend a lifetime answering questions about parents they barely had the chance to know. John was the only person who carried those same memories. His death left Caroline as the last surviving child of John and Jackie Kenedy. In a single night, she also lost her sister-in-law, Carolyn Bessette Kenedy, and Lauren Bessette, who had become part of the extended family. The tragedy once again placed the Kenedy family at the center of worldwide attention, even as Caroline tried to mourn privately. Unlike many public figures, Caroline rarely spoke in detail about her grief. Friends, historians, and those close to the family have often noted that she preferred to keep painful emotions away from cameras and headlines. She understood that some losses were simply too personal to explain in public. By the age of 41, Caroline had already lost her father, her mother, and now her only sibling. The family she had grown up with had almost completely disappeared. Yet even through this devastating heartbreak, she continued caring for her own husband and children while carrying the responsibilities that came with preserving her family's history. She had survived another unimaginable tragedy, but even more heartbreak was still waiting in the years ahead. A meaningful life. After enduring so many personal losses, it would have been understandable if Caroline Kenedy had stepped away from public life altogether. Instead, she chose a different path. Rather than becoming a celebrity because of her famous family name, she focused on education, public service, and raising her own family. Throughout her adult life, she worked quietly behind the scenes, believing that meaningful work mattered more than public attention. Education was always important in the Kenedy family, and Caroline continued that tradition. She attended Radcliffe College, where she studied history and graduated in 1980. Her years at Radcliffe helped her develop a strong interest in American government, history, and public service. She later continued her education at Columbia Law School, earning her law degree in 1988. Although she never built a traditional legal career in the courtroom, her legal education gave her a deeper understanding of the Constitution, civil rights, and the responsibilities of government. Before becoming more involved in public service, Caroline also worked in the arts. She served as a consultant for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The position reflected another lifelong interest that she had inherited from her mother, Jackie Kenedy, who had always valued literature, history, architecture, and the arts. Caroline believed that museums and cultural institutions helped preserve history while educating future generations. Writing also became an important part of her career. Over the years, she edited and co-authored several books that explored American ideals, constitutional freedoms, and civic responsibility. Many of these books collected speeches, historical writings, and important documents that helped readers better understand the nation's democratic principles. Rather than writing about herself or her family's private life, Caroline consistently chose subjects that encouraged people to learn more about American history and public service. One of her most lasting contributions came in 1989, when she helped establish the Profile in Courage Award. Inspired by her father's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Profiles in Courage, the award recognizes elected officials who make difficult decisions based on principle, even when those choices may be unpopular or politically risky. Caroline has remained deeply involved with the award for decades, presenting it to leaders who demonstrate integrity and courage in public office. The award became one of the clearest examples of how Caroline honored her father's legacy. Instead of simply preserving his memory through speeches or ceremonies, she helped create something that reflected the values he believed were important. It allowed future generations to see public service not as a path to personal fame, but as a responsibility that sometimes requires sacrifice. While continuing her professional work, Caroline also built a happy family life. In 1986, she married designer, author, and businessman Edwin Schlossberg. Their wedding took place at the Kenedy family's compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, with Jackie Kenedy present to celebrate the occasion. The marriage proved to be a lasting partnership, and together they welcomed 3 children: Rose, born in 1988, Tatiana, born in 1990, and John, better known as Jack, born in 1993. As the years passed, Caroline quietly became one of the leading guardians of the Kenedy family's legacy. She served on the board of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library Foundation, promoted educational programs, and later represented the United States as ambassador to Japan from 2013 to 2017, and ambassador to Australia from 2022 to 2025. In every role, she avoided unnecessary publicity, allowing her work to speak for itself. But the greatest joy in Caroline's later life would soon become the source of her deepest heartbreak. Tatiana Schlossberg. Tatiana Celia Kenedy. Schlossberg was born on May 5, 1990, to Caroline Kenedy and Edwin Schlossberg. She grew up in New York City alongside her older sister, Rose, and younger brother, Jack. Although she belonged to one of America's most famous families, her parents worked hard to give their children as normal an upbringing as possible. They avoided unnecessary media attention and encouraged their children to focus on school, friendships, and developing their own interests rather than relying on the Kenedy name. Like her mother before her, Tatiana developed a love of learning at an early age. She attended private schools in New York before enrolling at Yale University, one of the country's most respected institutions. At Yale, she earned a degree that reflected her growing interest in environmental issues and public policy. Friends and classmates described her as bright, curious, and thoughtful. Rather than seeking attention because of her family's history, she preferred to let her work speak for itself. After graduating, Tatiana pursued a career in journalism. She became an environmental reporter for the New York Times, where she focused on science, climate change, and the ways everyday decisions affect the environment. Her reporting aimed to explain complicated topics in a way that ordinary readers could easily understand. Instead of creating fear or controversy, she wanted to help people make informed choices about the world they lived in. Her passion for environmental issues eventually led to her first book. In 2019, she published Inconspicuous Consumption: The Environmental Impact You Don't Know You Have. The book explored how many common daily habits, using technology to buying clothing and eating food, can have hidden effects on the environment. Tatiana presented the information in a practical and accessible way, encouraging readers to think more carefully about the choices they made without making them feel judged. The book received positive reviews for its clear writing and balanced approach. It also showed that Tatiana had developed her own voice as a writer and journalist. While the Kennedy family had long been associated with politics and public service, Tatiana chose to contribute through education and environmental reporting. She built a career based on knowledge, research, and public understanding rather than political office. Away from work, Tatiana found happiness in her personal life. In 2017, she married George Moran, her longtime partner and college sweetheart. The wedding took place at the Kennedy family property on Martha's Vineyard, a location filled with family history and cherished memories. Friends and relatives gathered to celebrate the couple as they began their life together. Over the next several years, Tatiana and George started a family of their own. They welcomed their son, Edwin, in 2022. In May 2024, they celebrated the birth of their daughter, Josephine. Becoming a mother was one of the happiest chapters of Tatiana's life. She often balanced the demands of raising 2 young children with her professional work, continuing to write and report while embracing the responsibilities of parenthood. Then, without warning, everything changed with a single routine medical test. A diagnosis that changed everything. For Caroline Kenedy, it seemed that her family had finally entered a calmer chapter. Her daughter, Tatiana, had built a successful career, found a happy marriage, and become the mother of 2 young children. After decades of watching tragedy touch so many members of her family, Caroline had every reason to believe that this new generation would enjoy a brighter future. Then came a routine medical appointment that changed everything. In 2024, shortly after giving birth to her daughter, Josephine, Tatiana underwent routine blood work that many new mothers receive after childbirth. At first, there was no reason to believe anything was seriously wrong. However, the test showed an unusually high white blood cell count. Doctors ordered additional testing to understand the cause. The results brought devastating news. Tatiana was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, often called AML. It is an aggressive form of blood cancer that begins in the bone marrow, where blood cells are produced. Unlike some cancers that develop slowly over many years, AML can progress rapidly and often requires immediate treatment. Doctors usually begin intensive chemotherapy as soon as possible after diagnosis because the disease can spread quickly throughout the body. For Tatiana, the diagnosis came at one of the happiest moments of her life. She had just welcomed her second child into the world and was caring for a 2-year-old son at home. Instead of enjoying those first months with her growing family, she suddenly found herself facing hospital visits, difficult treatments, and an uncertain future. Despite the overwhelming news, Tatiana remained determined to focus on what mattered most to her children. Friends and relatives later described her as remarkably calm and thoughtful throughout her illness. While undergoing treatment, she continued thinking about how she could be present for Edwin and Josephine for as long as possible. Every moment with them became precious. She wanted to create memories they might one day hold on to, even if they were too young to remember every detail themselves. Rather than hiding her experience, Tatiana eventually chose to share it publicly. In November 2025, she published a deeply personal essay in The New Yorker. The article was widely praised for its honesty, intelligence, and emotional depth. Instead of focusing only on the medical details of her illness, she wrote about what it meant to receive a terminal diagnosis while raising 2 very young children. She explained how difficult it was to balance fear with everyday motherhood. There were still meals to prepare, stories to read, and children who needed comfort and love. Even while facing the possibility that her own life would be cut short, she wanted to make sure her children felt safe and surrounded by affection. Sadly, the hardest chapter for both mother and daughter was still just beginning. Carol Inez endures the unimaginable. After fighting acute myeloid leukemia with remarkable courage, Tatiana Schlossberg passed away on December 30th, 2025. She was only 35 years old. Her death marked another heartbreaking chapter for one of America's most well-known families, but for Caroline Kenedy, it was something even more painful. This time, she was not mourning as a daughter or a sister. She was mourning as a mother who had lost her own child. The Kenedy family announced Tatiana's passing through a brief public statement shared by the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation. It simply said, "Our beautiful Tatiana passed away this morning. She will always be in our hearts." The statement was short, but it reflected the way the Kennedy family has often handled moments of profound loss. Rather than making long public speeches or sharing deeply personal details, they have usually chosen quiet words that express love while protecting their family's privacy. Caroline had followed that same approach throughout her life, and even during this devastating moment, she remained true to it. Tatiana's funeral was held at the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola in New York City, a place that had hosted many important moments for prominent families over the years. Friends, relatives, and loved ones gathered to remember a woman whose life had been filled with intelligence, kindness, and a deep commitment to helping others understand the world through her writing. Caroline attended the service alongside her husband, Edwin Schlossberg, and their surviving children, Rose and Jack. Tatiana's husband, George Moran, was also there, facing the heartbreaking task of saying goodbye to his wife while beginning life as the sole parent of their two young children. History had taken another painful turn. In the days following Tatiana's death, Caroline's son, Jack Schlossberg, shared an emotional public tribute to his sister. His words reflected both his deep love for Tatiana and the close bond they had shared throughout their lives. He wrote that heartbreak did not even begin to describe what the family was feeling. He remembered Tatiana as someone who had so much more life to live. He described her as smart and funny, like their mother, and thoughtful and brilliant like their father. His message was simple, deeply personal, and filled with admiration for the sister he had lost far too soon. Despite the overwhelming grief, Caroline continued to appear beside her family with the same quiet dignity that had defined her entire life. She did not seek attention or publicly describe her private pain. Instead, she focused on supporting her husband, her surviving children, her son-in-law, and especially her two young grandchildren, who would now grow up without their mother. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video.